And we're on. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Ed and Joe Show. I'm Ed Sapienza, your co-host. As you can see, my regular co-host, Alderman at Large, attorney, restaurateur, Joe Kelly Lavassa, is not with us this evening. He is on a fact-finding mission. Joe is out searching for the truth. He's doing some research on the Black Acres case. That case is not over. Joe is going to be back next week with information on that and other important subjects. We are fortunate to have local activist, attorney Mike Porter. Mike, thanks for joining us this evening.
It's my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Glad you could make it. A lot of times that word activist is applied to liberals, but that's not necessarily the case here. There are such things as conservative activist or bipartisan activist.
That's right.
Yeah, and
a little bit of both.
Yeah, glad you could make it, Mike. And we are also very fortunate to be joined this evening by Brian Bulldog Tilton of the New Hampshire Rebellion, right?
Yep.
All right, Brian, I'm glad you could make it. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Nice to be here. I've watched your show for the past year, you and Joe, and nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you.
Great.
Pleasure. And in fact, this is so important to me that I gave up going to a Northern Pass public information session with the Site Evaluation Committee tonight.
Okay.
So I will be going back as soon as
It's
I'm
nice
out
and
here.
warm in here, so that's a good thing.
Warmer
right?
in here than it is, that's for sure.
Okay, so Brian is the Republican Outreach Coordinator with the New Hampshire Rebellion. Now, for those of you that don't know...
Is that a football team? I wasn't sure.
What the New Hampshire Rebellion is, they've made some noise. I've noticed them. I've noticed them on their marches. Now, I'm gonna tell you what I think they're about, and if I'm wrong, or Mike, if you have a different interpretation, go ahead and jump in. You're
All right.
pretty much trying to get big money out of politics.
Correct.
Out of campaigns and politics in general, once they're in there.
Particularly the corrupting influence of money, because we certainly understand that money is needed in politics.
Okay.
I mean, you got to run a campaign. You can't run a campaign on nothing.
Right.
So the question is, where does that money come from? How is it disclosed? And what are the undue influences of that money?
Now, would it be accurate to say that it's kind of a Granny D thing? Did that help spur
It's actually inspired from Granny D.
Granny D, okay.
Open Democracy, which is the parent organization of New Hampshire Rebellion. New Hampshire Rebellion is a project of Open Democracy.
Okay.
Open Democracy does a lot of research and policy stuff. Granny D was actually one of the founders.
Okay.
She founded Open Democracy.
One of the first questions that came to my mind when I read about your organization is I'm sure you get this all the time. What about the First Amendment? Okay. Mm-hmm. What about if I operate
a legal issue?
That's why we have an attorney with us. Let's say Mike.
And as a journalist, as a 20-year journalist, I appreciate the First Amendment. Let me
okay,
tell
right.
you.
We all do. It's what allows us to do this show.
Yep.
It's what allows us to go on Facebook and talk and
right.
gab and soapbox and whatever. Okay, without fear of reprisal. Mike here, let's say he opens up a widget factory or he builds a better mousetrap. He's very successful. He works 80 hours a week. He decides he likes Candidate Smith. He wants to give money to Candidate Smith. Mm-hmm. Is there anything wrong with that?
No.
Okay.
As an individual, as a corporation, is a different story.
So that's where, okay, well, for that matter, so what if it is a corporation?
Because the Federal Election Commission rules are against corporations giving directly to the candidates.
Okay.
That's why we have super PACs.
Okay, now, before we go too far into the weeds, I don't mean to cut you off, Mike, but we all say that as much as we love the First Amendment, established law should be followed. None of us are in favor of breaking the law, right? That's a slam dunk.
Well, sure.
Right? Okay, so okay.
Maybe.
Mike owns a widget factory. He wants to contribute to Candidate Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Or for that matter, I say if it's XYZ Corporation, now it gets a bit confused. Help me out here, Mike. Take it from there, okay? It's not okay for a corporation or what? I mean, it is. It's illegal. It's unethical. It's immoral.
The FCC has rules about who can give to candidates and in what dollar amounts. So if Mike is doing it as an individual, he is limited to $2,600 per candidate per election cycle.
$2,600
per candidate.
Okay,
Yes.
that's peanuts. It's nothing.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does the big money enter the picture?
That's where you have these things called super PACs.
Okay, which is now a PAC is Political Action Committee?
And I want to also interject, too. Prior to 2000, there was a major Supreme Court decision in 2010, and it was Citizens United case.
Yep.
And essentially what happened was when they came out and granted corporations First Amendment rights, or the spending of money as First Amendment rights, they didn't say they could give it directly to the campaigns, but that's when the super PACs really came into play. And we're talking millions of dollars.
Yeah, which
Correct?
Citizens United actually came about because it was a movie about Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And
we're going to be FCC about on this very subject. You can, right, but go ahead.
It was about her. It was a movie critical of her, and it involved the FCC and various rules and stuff. And Citizens United didn't want to disclose who was paying for this and the like. So Citizens United came out and says, yeah, they can do unlimited spending. So that's fine. And then the disclosure things is still a very fuzzy area, which is why we're involved, because we want full disclosure of everything.
Well, sure we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Republicans, Democrats, and the like.
Your organization is nonpartisan, correct?
Correct.
You're not. You don't love Democrats, hate Republicans. It's not like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Republican.
Okay.
I'm the Republican Outreach Coordinator because I have a lot of friends that are Republicans. I got inspired in this movement by a Republican. Actually, it was Buddy Roemer when he ran for president in the last presidential primary. Spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. He came into my radio show one day and he says, "Bulldog, let me tell you a story." He says, "Let me tell you a story about GE, $1 billion profits, and no income tax." I went, "What?" And he told me the story about all the perversion of money being sloshed around and the complicated tax rules that follow because it's all driven by special interests.
And the reality is, a corporation, when I went to law school, we had a professor, Starkis, and I know Joe had the same professor, and he used to say that corporations are that imaginary friend that you had as a child. You make them up. Well, corporations are actually made up by the government. The government has created corporations, LLCs, all these things. They are a government-created entity. So somehow to give a government-created entity First Amendment rights, it's a little bit unique. I mean, it's unique.
Yeah, I'll share with you what Chief Justice John Broderick had to say.
And by the way, you've got some heavy hitters in your organization here, right? You're not a bunch of bunch of minor leaguers. Chief, go ahead and name a few other ones.
Yeah, Chief Justice John Broderick, Jim Rubin, state senator, U.S. Senate candidate last year, Brad Cook, chair of the Ballot Law Commission, is one of our advisors.
Andrew Hemingway, I believe.
Andrew Hemingway is on board with us as well.
All right.
To name more people from the right, and then there's a bunch of people on the left as well. Congressman Paul Hodes, very sympathetic to us as well, and been involved. So so I mean, we do have a nice mix, and that's what we try to do. Is we're trying to find that balance there because, let's face it, this is an issue for some reason that has a perception that it's a left-wing driven issue.
It does.
It does. I understand that, and that's why I do what I do with the rebellion, is to help either not only just dispel that myth, but also take our message out to more Republicans, because Republicans are equally upset with the results of Citizens United as are Democrats. The numbers are identical in two major polls recently.
So $2,600 is the limit. Mike, who owns the widget factory, can give $2,600. So simple enough so far. How now?
Which is going to be disclosed by the candidates.
It's going to be disclosed. Now, how? Take me to the next step, the big money. How does that happen exactly?
Well,
that's super PACs.
Yes, they go right for the super PACs.
What is a super PAC?
A super PAC is a political action committee, and where they can raise unlimited amounts of money.
And give unlimited amounts away, or is there a cap?
They can spend unlimited amounts as well.
On candidates.
But they cannot give to the candidates.
Okay, they give to the Democratic
They can spend money in support of the candidates. Now, what a lot of these super PACs will do, this is where dark money comes in. This is another topic. Dark money is when those super PACs give to another organization, usually like a nonprofit or something like that, or some other politically active organization. And it's when the disclosures come into play as to where the money came from, or maybe not, they don't have to disclose in some cases. That's what we call dark money, because now you're trying to trace it all back.
It's hard because it's like an abyss.
Exactly.
Okay, now, so a super PAC can give to the DNC, the RNC, right? The Democratic National Committee, the Republican National Committee, or the state Democrats, or or the state Republicans, or the Manchester City Democrats, Manchester City Republicans?
You know, that's a question I don't have the answer to.
Okay.
That one I can't answer. I
sure.
don't know of that happening, but I don't have the answer to that one.
Okay. All right.
Could be, but who knows?
All right.
Because the political parties, there's actually been some movement to get political parties to be able to have unlimited fundraising as well, and unlimited contributions and things have been progressing that way. So political parties are then going to become the next thing to super PACs real soon.
And in a way, part of your, and I could be wrong on this, but part of your organization too is to kind of go back to the grassroots of a citizen-run government, not a corporate-run government, where if a corporation is allowed to give unlimited funds, they're going to outspend the individual 10 to 1, 20 to 1
And
easily.
and you make a very good point there, because this is where people are really upset, and this is why the perception that you just mentioned, corporate-run government versus citizen-run government, because a small number of families, 158 families nationwide, give the majority of the political contributions in the federal races.
Okay, so there's kind of a negative connotation to the corporations giving money, but it's not just corporations. I mean, I'm a dues-paying, card-carrying
There's unions
member
as well.
of the National Rifle Association. Obviously,
As am I.
Okay, and I don't see anything
Can I
wrong
have
with.
your guns, please? Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm leaving now.
I don't see anything
How
wrong
would you like it?
with the NRA. Or and I'm a union member. You know, my union lobbies, the NRA lobbies. I'm a member of the Disabled American Veterans. They lobby. So I don't see it as, you know, the corporations are the bad guys, and all these other organizations that I just mentioned are the good guys. You see what I'm saying? Again, it comes down to...
And you do hear this from the left, particularly about the NRA. You know, they're an evil lobby.
Right,
you know, the
right.
gun lobby. You know, they
Right.
own Congress, all
Right.
that stuff. And then on the other side, you have the Planned Parenthood issue as
Which
well.
we're going to talk about, yes.
So what we have to that, again, there is the issue of speech, First Amendment.
Right.
Now, the problem that a lot of people misunderstand about the First Amendment in this issue of the debate, they say money is speech. Well, if money is speech, then speech isn't free. That's a direct quote
Okay.
from Granny D.
All right. Well, you know, does your organization, folks, by the way, feel free to call in at 413-0223. We have Brian Bulldog Tilton here from New Hampshire Rebellion.
Love that bulldog. I mean, I'm a little intimidated.
You have a show out of Concord, right?
I did for 5.5 years.
And we're discussing campaign finance, we're discussing money in politics, and how it coincides with the First Amendment free speech. Now, does your group say, you know, the Koch brothers are bad, but the NRA is good? You know,
No, we don't get into
you
that.
don't get into these good guys, bad guys, and
No.
labeling.
No,
Okay.
we get into the problem.
You get into, all right.
The problem is the undue influence. And if you look at our 6-point pledge, which is at nhrebellion.org, and we have thousands of people signing this
I've
pledge
seen your
right
marches.
now.
I've seen you in the paper. I've
Yep.
seen you actually marching on.
We're very well known for our marches.
Yep, South Willow Street. But go ahead. What are the 6 points?
So off the top of my head, there's 6 points in that pledge. One of them is to end this lobbyist influence of things. You know, a government contract, or
Right.
lobbyist gives, hey, let me
For
give
my
to you,
widgets,
and
right?
then, oh, hey, wait a minute, remember I got this contract right here, and
But then again,
politician's going to remember,
I-
hey, he gave me a lot of money, I'm going to give him that no-bid government contract.
But I want the NRA in there lobbying. I want the DAV in there lobbying.
Yeah.
So I don't want the influence of lobbyists to be ended.
As long as they're not giving money to the candidates.
Directly, right.
Having meetings with the candidates, that's fine. That's great.
Right.
That's speech. That is
Okay.
fine. They're representing a membership organization. That's okay to have those conversations, and should be in a representative republic that we have
Right.
set
There's
up.
something in the Constitution about that, the airing of grievances or
But
something.
let me ask you this, and this is just kind of devil's
But it's
advocate.
when the money changes hands.
So the
That's where the
NRA is
question
made
comes
up
in.
by card-carrying members who pay dues. The same with the DAV and other places. So if the membership of the NRA gets together and says, hey, we want to support Ed Sapienza for president, they're citizens. They are citizens individually who are making a joint decision. Why should they then be prohibited from sending their money to that candidate?
if they do so as individuals. And this happens a lot. This is how, when you see a lot of the media coverage, we'll say candidate, Johnson received, $50,000 from such and such utility company.
Yeah.
Well, no, he didn't. Yeah, let's look into it. What they did was they looked through the financial disclosure reports of the contributions, because you have to list your employer. If you make a contribution over, I think it's like $200, you have to list who your employer is.
Okay.
And so what they do is they're gathering that information by employer. So that's how they make it look like it all came from one employer, when actually it came from a number of people. So that's just for the audience to really understand. There's those tiny little nuances that
Well, that's what's
get me.
those tiny little nuances are huge.
Oh yeah.
Right? All right. So what are some of your other main?
So we have that. We want redistricting reform, and the gerrymandering. Instead of the politicians picking the voters, let's have an independent commission draw the district lines so that the voters can choose the politicians.
Well, that coincides with the consensus every 10 years, doesn't it?
Yes, that's what the census is for. The census goes around every 10 years and counts noses.
Right.
And then they draw their congressional districts and so on. Then we have our House districts in the New Hampshire legislature and the Senate and executive council and
So
on down the line.
If they're just counting noses, where's the bad come in? Like,
Because they're trying to do it to protect themselves for re-election.
Okay.
So they draw the line. Ooh, Democrats are over here, they're bad. Or Republicans are over here, they're bad.
So inch it over a little bit to kind of get in there.
Exactly.
And
So
the
it becomes
gerrymandering?
an incumbent protection racket is what it becomes.
Okay.
And we found in our Open Democracy Index, which is a study that was released this past July, and we found that the number of people that are reelected, it's like an astonishing
Yeah, it's like-
80-some
it's
percent
way up there.
reelection.
Power of the
So you
incumbents.
hear all this talk, throw the bums out.
But it
right?
never happened.
It doesn't happen.
can't
Why?
happen.
Because it's a political
Right,
protection racket.
right.
I'll give you an example. Governor Larry Hogan, he's a Republican governor of Maryland. Only 2 Republican governors have been in Maryland since Spiro Agnew. Okay,
Wow.
Yeah.
so
Late 60s.
Larry Hogan is actually a very popular guy, and all his agenda items, reducing taxes, job creation, crime control, all that stuff, he's getting majority polling support. The number one issue for him, where he's getting the biggest poll results, ending gerrymandering. He established a commission to look at the way these districts are formed.
Right.
And almost everybody is on board with it, except for the entrenched politicians who've been in office for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Their bread and butter. That's how they get their retirement and they get their elections. They're reelected.
Yeah. So we want full disclosure of all the political spending, because anybody who's trying to influence your government, shouldn't you know where that money's coming from?
Okay.
You should know. So those are, and then one of the things in that pledge as well is calling for overturning Citizens United.
Okay.
And that's where there is some disagreement between the right and the left, because a lot of people on the left think overturning Citizens United is going to be a good thing. There's some on the right that say no, overturning Citizens United doesn't change a thing. You can change it by having full disclosure, ending the revolving door of lobbyists and regulators. That's another interesting thing too, and I see it here in New Hampshire, and you see it a lot in Washington D.C. These people that have served in the legislature or the Congress, or in a utility industry or something like that, when they come out, they become the regulators.
Right.
Yeah.
So now they're regulating their former employer, where they may be drawing a pension.
And then they
from
become the
them.
lobbyist, and then they become.
And same thing with congressmen. They become influence peddlers on K Street.
All right, but here's the thing. Let's say I'm a U.S. congressman. You've wined and dined me, right? You've helped my campaign. And you really want me to vote this way on whatever issue.
Yes.
It's still, at the end of the day, it's still my decision. I can say, Brian, thank you for all the input. Thank you for clarifying the issues. You broke it down for me. Thank you for this nice dinner, which I'm going to declare, right? I really appreciate all that. But you know what? Tomorrow, when this vote comes up, I'm going to have the courage of my convictions, regardless of everything you've done for me. In other words, the politician.
And I am not going to give you any more money ever
and,
again. And when you come back around for Election Day, that's going to be a whole lot less money you're going to have to play with.
Well, so be it. Let me ask you this.
And then I will turn around and run negative ads against you with the
really?
super
They'll do
PAC,
the 180?
where I can spend 100,000, 200,000 at a time.
Well, and I wanted to read Justice.
There will be payback, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, that's
You don't just walk your. It's almost like The Godfather. You don't just say no and walk away.
Ed voted against children.
Yeah, right. Well, that's just the dagger in the heart. And in that decision that was issued in 2010, Justice Stevens wrote in his dissent, quote, that this decision is a rejection of the common sense of the American people. And that's what it really comes down to, is when you talk to the average person, they don't want big money from corporations deciding elections. They want the people deciding them. But I agree with Ed, at the end of the day, we really need to start holding our politicians accountable. If they're taking money and their vote is being swayed, which is contrary to what we've elected them to do, not only do we have to get them out, but we have to we have to get that money out at the same time. 2
points to that. One is take a look at who the leading candidate is on both the right and the left.
Right.
Both of them have sworn off the big money influence of corporations and super PACs and the like.
Absolutely.
And they're walking away in the polls with it.
Yeah.
So that's point number one. Point number two is this goes back to another point in our pledge, and that is for what's called citizen-funded elections. How it's achieved is a great debate to have. There's a couple conservative theories that are tax credits for vouchers. You get the first $50 back that you pay in income taxes, and that can go to a federal candidate of your choice. Another option is to do a federal matching system, much like Ronald Reagan had when he ran for president. He was able to do it with a relatively small amount, and then there was a federal matching system that came in. So small donors, if, let's say, and this study was done recently of the current presidential candidates. Jeb Bush, let's use him as an example. I'll use Ben Carson as another.
Right.
Jeb Bush has all his donors are maxed out on how much they're allowed to give in the election cycle.
Yes.
That's like 85% roughly.
Really? Who's this now?
Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush. His donors are maxed out?
Yep.
Really?
The majority of his donors are the big money donors directly to his campaign. Then he's got that Right to Rise PAC. Ben Carson has taken a lot of small dollar donations.
Right.
Now, under a federal matching system, Jeb Bush wouldn't get anything for federal matching funds. Ben Carson, let's say 6 times the amount, which is what used to be in place in the 80s. His numbers now come up to here. He's on a competitive level with that. So when it comes time for crucial decisions, who do you think the candidate is going to listen to? The people who gave the small dollar donations that propelled them to office, or the people that gave the big dollar donations that propelled them to office?
Right, the big dollar.
Depends on who gets elected and what the influences were.
Yep. Brian, just the other day, I don't know if it was Sunday News or not, Hillary Clinton was on the front page, okay? Interesting timing here. She's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, okay? And my understanding is they're going to give her at least $20 million, okay? Now, Planned Parenthood gets money from the federal government, right? They then, now, if they're getting money from the federal government, how is it that they are allowed to give money to a candidate?
And don't forget, Planned Parenthood's a nonprofit. So let's talk about this for a second.
That one just kind of blows my mind. Go ahead.
We have a twofold question: is the taxpayer money going there and being used? And then, like you said, they're a non-profit.
Yes.
Go ahead with that.
This is a great question to ask, because I got this from a lot of my friends on Facebook. I thought Planned Parenthood was a nonprofit, and they get government money. How come they're giving to the candidates?
Now I agree with you more so. Now I'm starting to, I love free speech, but wait a minute. 20 million getting money? Now I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute.
So here's what they do. They set up this other organization. It's not... And this, again, this is the problem with media reporting. This is why words matter. And as a journalist, I got to really pick on this as a guy who spent 20 years in the business. It's not Planned Parenthood, the nonprofit organization that provides health services to women. It is Planned Parenthood Action Fund, which is another organization, another entity. Again, going back to the corporate entities, they set this fund up so they can engage in political activities, and depending on their structure, depends on what type of political activities they can engage in. In this case, they're able to endorse candidates and spend money on that candidate's behalf. So,
it's still stomach turning to me, though. It's still, at the end of the day, it's,
what it comes down to is what is for the public perception?
Yeah.
What is the difference between Planned Parenthood Action Fund and Planned Parenthood the organization?
There is no difference.
It's a paper wall, and that's what that's the problem that we face with so many of these types of things.
Right.
So they say that the $20 million that they're giving to Hillary, they didn't get that from.
And don't forget, there's lobbyists involved too. Because
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood there's lobbyists that represent Planned Parenthood and their interests in the New Hampshire legislature and on Capitol Hill.
And they could give money to a super PAC and not have to declare it.
There are some disclosures on super PACs, particularly here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire does have a disclosure law on super PACs, and there is some reporting on the federal level as well. It's the dark money that comes in, where I said it's when those super PACs give to another organization.
Right.
Here's a great one. Ted Cruz has 4 super PACs within a super PAC.
Wow.
And this has been reported just recently, I think just yesterday or the day before, by the Washington Post, and previously, I think, by the New York Times. But the super PAC, do you want to give to super PAC 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Yeah. And then, and even the donors to these super PACs are now getting confused because they don't know, which super PAC am I giving to?
Right.
Now, does your organization work in tandem with any other organizations, like, say, No Labels? They want to end the deficit and make Social Security solvent.
We don't work with them with No Labels per se. We did have a booth set up at their convention that they had here in Manchester a couple of months ago. But we had to pay, like everybody else had to pay for the table rental space. So no, we don't really work with them, but we do have partner organizations around the country. And it all falls under the hashtag Fight Big Money.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of organizations around the country that do what a lot of what we do. Everybody's unique too, and we're all separate entities. So there's for somebody like me, there's a conservative organization called Take Back Our Republic. John Pudner is the executive director of that organization. John Pudner is the guy who ran Dave Bratt's campaign, and Dave Bratt is the guy that took out Eric Cantor, the House Majority Leader, in that upset election in 2014.
In the primary.
Yeah, so John Pudner was the architect behind that victory. John Pudner is trying to get more disclosure in this thing. Now, he takes a slightly different approach, and that is, let's have unlimited contributions to the candidates, and that negates the needs for super PACs as long as everything is reported. In full real time within 24 hours, so you have full disclosure.
Yeah, simplicity.
And a number of presidential candidates agree with this, too. Chris Christie has answered this question.
Really? No limits? Just, you've got to record everything.
But record
it all within 24 hours online. So people can see in real time who's trying to influence what.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Again, that's one of the solutions, many solutions that are out there. We don't have all the exact solutions, but we certainly can have the discussions, and that's the important thing.
Yeah. Like I'm kind of stuck on this Planned Parenthood one. I just think it's mind blowing. It would be like if Mike lent me $20 last month, right? And I went to say, well, Mike, here, let me pay you that money back. Oh wait, my wife gave me this 20 to get milk and bread, on the way home. So I'll give you this 20. This makes it right.
Why don't I have my stamp with me that I can put on that and say not to be used for bribing politicians?
Yeah.
And there's an organization locally called the Stamp Stampede.
I saw that in the paper.
Yeah. So.
I saw that.
Okay. Well, we learned a lot tonight about the New Hampshire Rebellion and campaign finance, free speech, how it coincides, special interests. I want to thank Brian Bulldog Tilton for coming on. Brian, do you want to let the folks know how they can get in touch with you, how they can,
please,
if not actually join the New Hampshire Rebellion as a full-fledged member, at least follow it? There's some contact information.
Right. We don't charge dues.
Really?
So that's
well,
good.
hey, now you got my ear.
Jeez, I might have to
You're
sign
on
up for this
Facebook.
one.
We're on Facebook, NH Rebellion, and you can go to nhnrebellion.org as well and sign our pledge. And we have a big event coming up in downtown Manchester,
Oh, really?
February 5th, 6th, and 7th, right across the
Wow.
street from the Radisson.
So right prior to the
Right up to the primary.
Primary.
Yes, and we have a big slate of speakers coming in.
Oh, you do? Tell us about
Both
this. This is
conservatives and Republicans.
5, 6, and 7.
liberals. Yep.
You guys are
Wow.
sponsoring
Friday,
this.
Saturday, Sunday.
And it's at the
It's going to be in a big tent. It's going to be heated.
This is where now? At the hotel?
Right across the street from the Radisson Hotel.
Okay,
downtown
across from
Manchester.
the Radisson. All right.
In the park, right
Yeah,
across
yeah,
the street.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, heated tent.
Yep.
And who you got?
Free admission?
Free admission.
Hey,
Absolutely.
I know you're
Free
all
food?
over that,
So
Mike.
there will be some free goodies.
All right. Okay.
free-
Cups,
I'm in.
coffee cups, maybe.
We're gonna have panel discussions. We've
Wow.
got
What do you got for speakers coming? Who we got? Some
well,
heavy-
John Pudner is one of them,
Okay,
as
yeah.
I mentioned earlier. We're gonna have some panel discussions. Chief Justice John Broderick
Really?
is
Okay.
is committed.
I will be there for that.
We haven't confirmed all the speakers yet. We're still in, but we have there's some people on the left, some names that I'm not as familiar with will be there.
Okay.
Larry Lessig will be there. He was instrumental. He's a Harvard law professor. He was actually a Supreme Court clerk to either Justice Thomas or Alito. I can't.
Oh,
No,
okay.
Scalia or Alito. It's one
Okay.
of those two. I can't
Yep.
remember which one. But he's a liberal, and he was involved in the Democrat primary recently.
Okay.
So he was with us for the kickoff of the New Hampshire Rebellion with one of our marches in Dixville Notch. So he's going to be speaking.
Okay,
about
great.
these
I think I'm
issues.
going to get down there. I want
And
to.
presidential candidates are
I
coming
was
by
gonna say,
too.
candidates have got to come by. They
Wow.
have to.
Oh
All right,
yeah,
great.
there's
So-
going to be hundreds of people there.
All right. You know what? We do have a call coming in, and we'll take it before we sign off with Brian. We will take this call,
Okay.
and we'll let you. Can I go ahead and take that, John, or what?
Yes.
Okay, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, this is Robert. Routine, I call in.
Yep.
Just got in, just tuned in. I have a question for your guest.
Go right ahead.
I had
Good
something to
answer.
comment on the Planned Parenthood just giving the Hillary
Yeah,
campaign $20 million.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
Yeah, we were covering that, Robert. But no, that's fine. Go ahead, Brian. Answer Robert's question.
This is going to be a political nightmare for Planned Parenthood because
Thanks, Robert.
Again, it's what's reported, what's reality, what's perception is all kinds of things wrapped up into one.
Right.
Planned Parenthood, the organization that takes taxpayer dollars. There's an action part of Planned Parenthood, a separate entity,
Right.
but still bears
Yeah.
the Planned Parenthood name. That's endorsing Hillary Clinton, spending money on her behalf. They're going to be running a lot of TV commercials. They're going to be spending heavily,
Man.
again, with a lot of big donors. So
Yep. Okay.
there's
Yep.
all of this going on. So, yeah, certainly, and there's good reason to ask these questions.
Oh,
yeah.
certainly.
They
certainly.
need to be asked
Yep.
because this is
Yep.
what happens a lot in politics. And again, takes us back to maybe if you had those citizen-funded elections in some way, shape, or form. Again, I mentioned three
This would be
proposals
gone.
earlier. This takes away a lot of that.
All right.
And I think, and I sincerely believe that when you take the big money influence out of a handful of people and empower the small donors, I think you can now have a reasonable discussion on so many issues.
Oh,
We
yeah.
become less divisive.
Right.
We can actually sit and talk to each other, easily achieve the common ground, and start building out to the more difficult problems. And I think when you do that, you have a level playing field, a fair debate can be had, and I just happen to think conservatives will win. So.
All right, Brian Bulldog Tilton, Republican
My personal
Outreach
opinion.
Coordinator
Hey, you never
for the New Hampshire Rebellion. Thanks for coming on.
Thank
Folks,
you.
don't go away. We're going to discuss local issues in 37 seconds. All right. Thank you.